It was my third week of college when I realized I was falling for my roommate. Not the ideal situation, especially when you're still trying to figure out if you even belong at this university. Let me take you back to how it all started. Westlake University, a sprawling campus with Gothic architecture and modern amenities that somehow still managed to have dorm rooms the size of glorified closets. That's where I met him. Ethan Parker, the guy who would eventually make my heart race over something as mundane as a phone charger. When housing assignments came out during the summer, I'd stalked Ethan on Instagram like any normal person would. Athletic build, wavy brown hair that fell just right over his forehead, and a smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. I'd spent the weeks before move-in day wondering if we'd get along, if he'd be cool with having a gay roommate, or if this would be another year of awkward dancing around my identity. The first day we met, Ethan shook my hand firmly and helped me carry my boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. College maintenance, he'd joked, always reliable except when you need them. His easy laugh and the way he immediately made space for my things on the shared bookshelf put me at ease. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. But here's the thing about dorm life that no one warns you about. It's the little things that become monumental. The bathroom schedule, the unspoken rules about guests, and most importantly, the limited number of outlets in a room designed in the era when the most advanced technology was a desk lamp. Our room had exactly 4 outlets. Between my laptop, phone, desk lamp, and the mini fridge we shared, and Ethan's similar collection of power-hungry devices, we were constantly playing a game of electrical musical chairs. The worst part? Only one outlet was conveniently located near both our beds, the one between our desks that we'd silently agreed to reserve for phone charging at night. Let me explain why this matters more than it might seem. In college, your phone isn't just a device, it's your lifeline. It's how you check class schedules, submit assignments at the last minute, order late-night pizza when the dining hall food is questionable, and most importantly, maintain some connection to the world outside your academic pressure cooker. A dead phone in college is like losing a limb. You can technically survive, but you'll be severely handicapped. That particular Tuesday night, I'd been at the library until nearly midnight, cramming for my economics midterm. My phone battery was hovering at a dangerous 3% when I finally dragged myself back to the dorm room. I pushed the door open quietly, assuming Ethan would be asleep. Instead, I found him sitting cross-legged on his bed, textbooks spread around him like some sort of academic summoning circle, the soft glow of his desk lamp creating shadows across his concentrated face. "Hey," he whispered, looking up from his notes. "How was the study session?" "Brutal," I replied, dropping my backpack on the floor. "I'm pretty sure economics is just made-up rules designed to torture freshmen." He laughed, that genuine laugh that made me feel like I'd accomplished something significant. "Tell me about it. I've been staring at these chemistry formulas so long I'm starting to see molecules when I close my eyes." I reached for my charger on my desk, only to realize it wasn't there. After a moment of panic and searching through my backpack, I remembered I'd left it in the common room earlier. "Damn it," I muttered. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked, looking up from his notes again. "I left my charger in the common room, and my phone's about to die." I held up my phone to show him the blinking red battery icon. I should probably go get it before someone walks off with it. Ethan glanced at the clock, 12:23 a.m., and then back at me. "Use mine," he offered, gesturing to his charger plugged into the outlet between our desks. "I'm at 40%, should be enough to get through the night." I hesitated. "You sure? I don't want to leave you stranded tomorrow. We have an 8 a.m. class together, remember? You can just give it back then." The simple kindness of it made me smile. "Thanks, man." I reached for his charger, but as I was about to unplug his phone, he said, "Wait, actually." He unplugged his phone and scooted over on his bed, making room. "Why don't we just share? That way neither of us has to worry about it." It was such a practical solution, but something about the invitation to sit on his bed made my pulse quicken. "Yeah, that works," I said, trying to sound casual as I sat down beside him, careful to leave appropriate roommate distance between us. Ethan plugged both our phones into the charger, using a small splitter he pulled from his desk drawer. "Got this for Christmas last year," he explained. "My family has like 1 million devices and never enough outlets." "Smart." I nodded, watching our phones light up with the charging symbol. His fingers lingered near mine as we both set our phones down on the mattress between us. I couldn't help but notice how his hands were slightly larger than mine, with a small scar across his right knuckle that I'd never noticed before. "So," he said, leaning back against the wall, "on a scale of 1 to considering dropping out, how bad was the econ studying?" And just like that, we fell into conversation. What started as commiserating about classes evolved into stories about our hometowns, our families, our high school experiences. Ethan had grown up in a small coastal town where everyone knew everyone's business. He told me about sneaking onto the beach after hours with his friends, about working at his parents' hardware store every summer, about coming out to his family during his junior year of high school. That part made me sit up straighter. "You're gay?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "Yeah, is that a problem?" No, not at all," I said quickly. I am too. I just didn't know you were." "I figured," he said with a shrug. "You have that rainbow pin on your backpack." I laughed, feeling a strange mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite name. "Not exactly subtle, am I?" "I like that about you," he said simply, and the way he looked at me then made the room feel suddenly warmer. We talked for hours, our phones charging between us, forgotten. I learned that Ethan played guitar, but was too shy to perform for anyone. He learned that I collected vintage movie posters and could recite the entirety of The Princess Bride from memory. We discovered we both had an irrational fear of geese. They have teeth on their tongues, Alex. Teeth. And shared a deep love for those cookies with the strawberry jam in the middle. The conversation flowed so easily that I almost forgot about the time until I glanced at my phone and saw it was nearly 3 a.m. "Whoa, we should probably get some sleep," I said, though I felt more awake than I had all day. "Probably," Ethan agreed, but made no move to end our conversation. Instead, he asked, "Do you ever think about how random it is that we ended up as roommates? Like, out of all the possible combinations, the housing system put us together." "Maybe it's not so random," I suggested, feeling brave in the late-night vulnerability that had settled between us. "Maybe there's some algorithm that matches people who might get along. Or maybe we're just lucky," Ethan said softly. I noticed then that our phones had both reached 100% charge, the little lightning bolt icons replaced with full green batteries. But neither of us moved to unplug them. Instead, Ethan's hand moved slightly closer to mine on the mattress, his pinky finger just barely touching my own. My heart was hammering so loudly I was sure he could hear it. The room felt charged with a different kind of electricity now, one that had nothing to do with our phones. I looked up from our almost touching hands to find him watching me, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of his desk lamp. "Alex," he said, my name sounding different somehow in the quiet of our room. "I'm really glad you're my roommate." "Me too," I managed to say, though my throat felt suddenly dry. His fingers moved then, deliberately sliding over mine. Not grabbing, not holding, just resting there, warm and certain. It was such a small gesture, but in that moment, it felt monumental. Like crossing a threshold we couldn't uncross. I turned my hand slightly, allowing our fingers to intertwine more fully. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, and I felt goosebumps rise on my arm. We sat like that for what felt like both an eternity and not nearly long enough, our charged phones forgotten between us. "Is this okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice cracking like a middle schooler's. The thing is, it was more than okay. It was terrifying and exhilarating and confusing all at once. I'd had crushes before, even dated a bit in high school, but this felt different. Maybe because we lived together, or maybe because Ethan himself was different, genuine in a way that made me feel like I could be completely myself around him. Eventually, reluctantly, we had to acknowledge the late hour and our early class. As we unplugged our fully charged phones and moved back to our respective beds, there was a new awareness between us, like the air itself had changed composition. "Good night, Alex," Ethan said as he turned off his desk lamp, plunging the room into darkness save for the moonlight filtering through our thin curtains. "Good night," I replied, staring up at the ceiling, my hand still tingling where his had touched. The next morning should have been awkward. That's how these things usually go, right? You have a moment, and then in the harsh light of day, you both pretend it never happened. But when my alarm went off at 7:15 a.m., I opened my eyes to find Ethan already awake, sitting on the edge of his bed, looking at me. "Morning," he said, smiling that smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. I got us coffee. He nodded toward my desk, where a steaming cup sat next to a wrapped muffin. The line at the campus cafe was insane, but I figured we could use the caffeine after last night. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made my chest feel tight in the best possible way. "You didn't have to do that," I said, sitting up and running a hand through my undoubtedly messy hair. "I wanted to," he replied simply. As we got ready for class, moving around each other in the small space we shared, there were moments our hands would brush or our shoulders would touch, and each time, instead of moving away, we'd linger just a second longer than necessary. It was like we were having a conversation without words, testing the boundaries of this new thing between us. In economics class, Ethan sat next to me instead of with his usual group of friends from the soccer team. When I raised an eyebrow at him, he just shrugged and whispered, "Better view from here," which made me blush and fumble with my notebook. The days that followed were filled with these small moments of connection. We'd study together in the evenings, our knees touching under the shared space of our desks. We'd walk to the dining hall together, and Ethan would let his hand brush against mine as we navigated the crowded pathways. We'd watch movies on his laptop, sitting closer than roommates typically would, until eventually, his arm would find its way around my shoulders, and my head would rest against his chest. We didn't put a label on it right away. There was an unspoken agreement to let this thing between us develop naturally, without the pressure of definitions. But our friends noticed the change. My friend Layla raised her eyebrows knowingly when Ethan brought me coffee during our study session in the library. His teammate Marcus made a comment about Ethan being whipped when he left a party early to watch a movie marathon with me. About 3 weeks after the Charger incident, as I come to think of it, we were walking back from a late-night food run to the 24-hour diner just off campus. The air had that perfect fall crispness to it, and the campus was quiet except for the distant bass of music from weekend parties. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan said, slowing his pace. "You just did," I teased but nodded. "Go ahead." He took a deep breath, his exhale visible in the cool night air. "What are we doing?" "I mean, I know what I want us to be doing, but I want to make sure we're on the same page." I felt a flutter of nervousness in my stomach. "What do you want us to be doing?" I asked, needing to hear him say it first. Ethan stopped walking altogether, turning to face me under the glow of a campus streetlight. "I want to be with you, Alex. Not just as roommates or friends. I want to be able to hold your hand without making it seem accidental. I want to introduce you as my boyfriend. I want to take you on proper dates instead of just grabbing coffee between classes." The directness of his words made my heart race. This was really happening. "I want that too," I admitted, my voice steadier than I expected it to be. "I have since, well, probably since move-in day, if I'm being honest." His smile then was brighter than the streetlight above us. "Really? That long?" I nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed, but also relieved to finally say it out loud. "You helped me carry my boxes and made a bad joke about the maintenance department. I was pretty much a goner." Ethan laughed, reaching for my hand and intertwining our fingers properly, deliberately, not hiding it this time. And here I thought I was being subtle with my crush. "About as subtle as a neon sign," I teased, squeezing his hand. But I wasn't sure if it was just friendliness or something more until the Charger night. "Ah yes, my master plan," he said with mock seriousness. "Seduce you with my phone charging accessories. It worked, didn't it?" "Apparently so," he murmured, stepping closer to me. His free hand came up to rest on my cheek, warm against the cool night air. "Can I kiss you, Alex?" Instead of answering, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his. His mouth was soft and tasted faintly of the chocolate milkshake he'd had at the diner. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but then his arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt myself melting into him. It was better than I had imagined, and trust me, I had imagined it plenty of times. When we finally pulled apart, both a little breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that since I saw you struggling with those boxes on move-in day," he confessed. "Why didn't you?" I asked, my hand still resting on his shoulders. "Wasn't sure if you'd be interested. Plus, I didn't want to make things weird if you weren't. We do have to live together for the whole year." I laughed softly. "Fair point. Though I think we're past worrying about making things weird now." "Definitely past that," he agreed. pressing another quick kiss to my lips before taking my hand again as we continued our walk back to the dorm. That night, we pushed our twin beds together, ignoring the awkward gap in the middle, and fell asleep with Ethan's arm around me, my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Our phones charged side by side on the nightstand, both plugged into his splitter, both reaching 100% together. The weeks that followed were a beautiful blur of firsts. Our first official date, a picnic by the campus lake. Our first movie night as a couple, where we paid more attention to each other than the film. Our first argument about whether cereal is a soup. It's not, no matter what Ethan claims. And our first reconciliation, which involved a lot of kissing and an agreement to disagree about the cereal debate. We faced challenges too, of course. There were the expected ones. Navigating our new relationship while maintaining our studies, figuring out how to be boyfriends and roommates simultaneously, dealing with the occasional raised eyebrow or muttered comment from less accepting peers. But there were unexpected challenges too. Ethan's parents, while supportive of his sexuality in theory, were hesitant about him getting into a serious relationship so early in college. They're worried I'll get distracted from my studies, he explained after a tense phone call with his mother. They did the same thing when I dated a guy in high school. My own challenge came in the form of my academic advisor, who noticed my grades slipping slightly in the weeks after Ethan and I got together. College relationships can be wonderful, Dr. Martinez said during our meeting, but don't let your future suffer for a first love. Her words stung, not because they were meant to be harsh, but because they reflected a fear I hadn't wanted to acknowledge, that what Ethan and I had might be temporary, a college experience rather than something lasting. When I shared this worry with Ethan one night as we lay in our pushed-together beds, he was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. I can't promise you forever, he finally said, his voice thoughtful. Nobody can really promise that, especially not at 19. But I can promise you that this isn't just some college fling for me. You matter, Alex. What we have matters. It was exactly what I needed to hear, not a fairy tale promise, but an honest acknowledgement of our reality and the value of our relationship within it. We found our rhythm as the semester progressed. Study dates in the library where we actually studied, mostly, supporting each other through midterms and papers, celebrating small victories, and comforting each other through disappointments. We learned each other's habits and quirks, how Ethan always set 3 alarms but slept through all of them, how I couldn't function without coffee in the morning, how he hummed while he showered, how I talked in my sleep. And through it all, every night, our phones charged side by side, often forgotten as we focused on each other instead. As finals week approached, the stress level in our dorm room reached new heights. Ethan had 3 exams back-to-back, and I had a 20-page paper due for my literature class along with 2 finals. We were both running on minimal sleep and maximum caffeine, snapping at each other over small things like whose turn it was to take out the trash or who had borrowed whose highlighter without asking. The night before Ethan's chemistry final, I returned to our room after a grueling study session to find him sitting on the floor surrounded by textbooks and empty energy drink cans, his hair sticking up in all directions from running his hands through it in frustration. I'm going to fail, he announced as I walked in. I'm going to fail, and my scholarship will be revoked, and I'll have to drop out and work at my parents' hardware store for the rest of my life, selling nails to weekend warriors and giving advice about paint colors I know nothing about. I dropped my backpack and sat down on the floor beside him, surveying the chaos of his study materials. You're not going to fail, I said firmly. You've been studying for weeks. You know the stuff. I don't though, he insisted, showing me a practice problem he'd been working on. I keep getting this reaction wrong, and it's exactly the kind of question Dr. Powell loves to put on exams. I looked at the problem, which might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all I understood of it. Chemistry had never been my strong suit, but I understood Ethan, and I knew what he needed in that moment wasn't a tutor, but a supporter. Okay, I said, standing up and offering him my hand. You need a break. We're going for a walk. Alex, I don't have time for a walk. My exam is in 14 hours. Exactly. And you're going to fry your brain if you keep staring at these problems without a break. 15 minutes, that's all I'm asking. He sighed but took my hand, allowing me to pull him to his feet. Fine. 15 minutes. We walked around the quiet campus, the December air cold enough to see our breath, but not uncomfortable. I held his hand, squeezing it occasionally, letting him vent about his professor's teaching style and the complexity of organic chemistry reactions. When we returned to our room, I made him sit on his bed while I cleared a space on his desk, organizing his notes and textbooks into a more manageable system. Then I plugged in both our phones, mine nearly dead from a day of use, his completely dead from being forgotten in his study frenzy. "Now," I said, sitting beside him on the bed, "explain this reaction to me like I'm 5 years old. You don't need to know this stuff, Alex." "No, but you do. And sometimes teaching someone else is the best way to solidify your own understanding. So pretend I'm a very intelligent 5-year-old who needs to understand organic chemistry." He laughed, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "A very intelligent 5-year-old, huh? The most intelligent. A prodigy, really." And so Ethan began explaining the reaction, breaking it down into simpler terms, using analogies that made sense to a literature major. As he talked, I asked questions, some genuine, some just to make him think about the concept from different angles. Before long, he was drawing diagrams on a whiteboard we'd hung on our wall, his excitement growing as concepts connected in his mind. "Wait, I think I get it now," he said after about an hour, staring at his own diagram. "It's not about memorizing the steps. It's about understanding why the molecules behave that way. See? You do know this stuff," I said, smiling at the renewed confidence in his voice. He turned to me, his expression soft with gratitude. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" "Make me see it differently. Make me calm down enough to actually think." I shrugged. "That's what partners do, right? Help each other see things from a new perspective when they're stuck." Ethan set down his marker and moved to sit beside me on the bed again. "You're pretty amazing, you know that?" "I have my moments," I said with a smile. He leaned in and kissed me softly, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. "Thank you," he murmured against my lips. We stayed up late that night, Ethan reviewing his notes with newfound clarity, me working on my literature paper. Every so often, one of us would reach out, a hand on a shoulder, a quick kiss, a shared smile. Small connections that kept us grounded amid the stress of finals. At some point, I noticed both our phones had reached 100% charge, the little lightning bolt icons gone. But neither of us moved to unplug them. Instead, Ethan's hand found mine across the small space between our desks, his fingers lingering over mine just as they had that first night weeks ago. "Remember when this all started?" he asked, nodding toward our charging phones. "With the last charger port? How could I forget? It was the smoothest move ever." "Oh, let's just share my charger on my bed," I teased, mimicking his voice. He laughed, squeezing my hand. "Hey, it worked, didn't it?" "It did," I agreed, turning my hand to properly hold his. Though I'm still not convinced it wasn't a calculated plan to seduce me. "If I'd been that strategic, I would have made my move way sooner," he admitted. "I had the biggest crush on you from day one." "Really? Day one? Really? You walked in wearing that vintage Star Wars t-shirt and those glasses that keep sliding down your nose, and I thought, oh no, he's cute and a nerd. I'm in trouble." I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the overheated dorm room. "Well, for what it's worth, I thought you were way out of my league when I first saw you." "Out of your league?" Ethan looked genuinely surprised. "Why would you think that? Have you seen yourself? Plus, you're on the soccer team. You're smart. Everyone likes you. Classic popular guy material." He shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "And you're brilliant and funny and see the world in this amazing way that makes me want to see it through your eyes. Trust me, if anyone's punching above their weight here, it's me." I felt my face heat up at his words. Even after weeks of dating, Ethan still had the ability to make me blush with his earnestness. "Maybe we're both just where we're supposed to be," I suggested. "I like that theory," he said, leaning over to kiss me again. We survived finals week, barely. Ethan aced his chemistry exam. "It's a Christmas miracle," he declared when he saw his grade. And my literature professor emailed to tell me my paper was one of the best in the class. As the campus emptied for winter break, we faced our first separation since becoming a couple. 3 weeks isn't that long," Ethan said as he packed his duffel bag, though his frown suggested he thought it was an eternity. "And we'll text every day? Video chat too." "I know," I agreed, sitting on my bed watching him pack. "It's just going to be weird not seeing you every day." He paused his packing to sit beside me, taking my hand in his. "I'm going to miss you like crazy," he admitted. My parents are already rolling their eyes at how much I talk about you. Same with my mom. She says she feels like she knows you already. Well, she will soon. Don't forget, you promised to visit for New Year's. I nodded, already looking forward to it. Ethan's coastal hometown was only a 3-hour drive from mine, and we'd made plans for me to spend the last few days of break with his family before we returned to campus. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, Ethan pulled me into a tight hug, his face buried in my neck. I love you, he whispered, the first time either of us had said those words. I pulled back slightly to look at him, my heart racing. I love you too, I replied, the words feeling right, natural, like they'd been waiting to be spoken. His smile then was brighter than I'd ever seen it, crinkling his eyes in that way I adored. He kissed me once more before reluctantly getting into his car, promising to text when he arrived home safely. As I watched him drive away, I thought about how much had changed in just one semester. I'd arrived at college nervous, unsure, wondering if I would find my place. Now, I had not just a place, but a person, someone who made me feel seen and understood in a way I hadn't known was possible. And it had all started with a shared charger port and fingers that lingered just a little too long after the battery hit 100%. Sometimes the biggest connections in our lives begin with the smallest ones: a borrowed pencil, a held door, a shared umbrella in the rain. For Ethan and me, it was a charger port and the quiet vulnerability of a late-night conversation. A small beginning that led to something neither of us had expected, but both of us needed. As I walked back to my empty dorm room to finish my own packing, I smiled at the thought of returning in January, of starting a new semester with Ethan by my side. Whatever challenges came our way, academic pressure, family expectations, the natural growing pains of a new relationship, we'd face them together, drawing power from our connection just as surely as our phones drew power from that shared charger port. Because sometimes, the most unexpected connections turn out to be exactly the ones we need to keep us going, to keep us charged, to help us reach 100%. Total _char_count, 18,727.